Hello, Dr. Malik. Thank you so much for giving us time for an interview. Amartya Sen talked of development as freedom, and that has been a seminal book for economists, development practitioners across the board. But the BRIC economies are symbolized with inequality, poverty. So in the end, is development actually freedom? What would you say about that?
Well, Amit, of course, about 20 years ago, the UN launched the Human Development Report, which is fundamentally about putting people first, and which focus on capabilities, your choices on living a healthy life, educated life, life with enough resources to meet your needs. So if you see it from that perspective, clearly when you reduce poverty, you're increasing freedoms. When you mitigate environmental degradation, you're increasing your choices. When you have better jobs, you increase your choices as well. So they seem to be fairly straightforward, but somehow it's quite difficult for most policymakers to bring them together. And Amrita works closely with us. We are very pleased by that. And the current year's report, which is about to be launched in March, is about the rise of the South, and trying to say that not just BRICS, the Brazil, China, India's of this world, but there are at least 40 other countries which are doing much better than expected, and this is accelerated the last decade. So when you put that in perspective, clearly people are doing better. So and that is about choices, and whether we present Brazil and China and India as competitors is a slightly different perspective. But no one expected China to become the #1 trading partner of India. No one did. China and Africa in '99 was $2 billion trade between two parts. Last year was nearly $140 billion. So the world is changing very dramatically. And in some ways this is the time when the South can most sensibly think through the policies it needs to advance freedom. This is the right time.
Do you think we're near solving this whole deadlock where we're going to sort of give more, we're trying to make this whole emphasis on economics? Do you think that we're anywhere near even solving that deadlock? Because it doesn't look like, if you look at it externally, inequalities have increased, and we talk about it ad nauseum. And in that sense, it's a glaring problem in South Asian countries. So it looks like the deadlock's not anywhere near to resolve.
The short answer is yes, they should. The longer answer is that it is possible to change your futures. Latin America was seen to be a very highly unequal continent, more advanced than many other developing countries. But Brazil, through a variety of interesting social programs, has managed to reduce income and general inequality. So it is possible to do these things. And what also it demonstrates that if you invest in people, if you invest in enlarging their freedoms, growth also benefits. When you do growth without doing the first part, then it actually is not sustainable growth. And even in South Asia, there's Amartya was here about a few weeks ago, and he talked about Bangladesh and India as a comparison. Bangladesh, despite not having grown as fast as India, is doing better in most parts, most aspects of human development. And global data has now demonstrated quite empirically, I would say, that equal societies do better than in most indicators of well-being than unequal societies, including growth, by the way. So Bangladesh, despite different governments, despite different strategies, has not had growth reversals. Other countries in South Asia have had that. Pakistan, for instance, or Sri Lanka for that matter. So I think there's a great opportunity of bringing human development concepts into human development policies. And that to me is the challenge for South Asia.
Yes, there have been alternative indexes that come. We have the Human Development Index and other indicators, but do you think that policymakers, anyone, will ever sort of actively maybe concentrate on sort of gauging progress through these indicators than mere economic indicators?
Actually, as I said, with the right policies you can reduce inequality. And by the way, when people deal with inequality, they talk mostly about income inequality.
Yes.
But if you look at health and education, inequalities are coming down actually. And long term, the projections are inequality will go down because better educated people, healthier people do better. So that's the whole notion of inequality in a broader sense. And if there's a thesis that equal societies do better, then issue equity is quite important. It is important not just in terms of doing better as a community, but doing better as a society is important. And why is it in the same country some groups do so much better than others? So one has to reflect on that. If you're not bringing most or whole of society forward, then you're failing as national leaders and national institutions, national policies. So if you put people at the center of your decision making, it becomes quite straightforward actually. And this is equally important even in very technical areas like macroeconomic management. Central bank governors, for instance, have been trained for a long time to maintain price stability. That's what they were taught to do. But there are many countries who have given up that idea, developing countries I'm talking about, who have then decided, no, we must maintain a certain level of growth, or we must maintain a certain level of well-being. And what does it mean in terms of monetary policies to do that? So there's a whole array of policies which have to have the prism of human development in order to advance human progress.
In your session at the DSDS, at the BRICS session, you talked a bit about the public-private choice. Would you talk to me a bit about it, because it seemed very interesting?
You know, I think there's a very fundamental choice coming very soon in front of us. It started actually, we have one of the leading senators in Brazil is on our advisory board, and he used to be the Minister of Education, and he actually started the Bolsa Escola program, which became the Bolsa Familia program, which is a very well-known program now. And he raised something interesting, gave me an interesting story that in Brazil, because of the liquidity issues, the financial crisis, several professors in the universities, their salaries went down by 40%. All right? So what do you do? How do you respond to that when it's such a dramatic drop? So of course your child which was in private schools, you put in public schools. The transport options which were, you're driving your own car, you start taking the bus. In both cases, he said something interesting happened. In both cases, the professors in question started caring for the quality of schools, which they were not caring before about public schools, because the child did not go to public schools, they went to private schools. And they started caring about transport, because the guy was driving his own transport and now he's going on a bus. So now he's interested in how clean the bus is, does it come on time. So the reality is that if you follow the private-led life patterns of the US, and if you project that to the whole world, it's physically not possible to accommodate that on one planet. You need 3 or more planets. Since you don't have that, you have a difficult choice, or maybe a better choice, which is that you find ways of reducing your footprint. You design cities which reduce footprints. You try to bring jobs and people closer together so the demand for transport is reduced. And you have to decide on what is public, what is private. Very profound decision. And this actually raised the issue of public goods fundamentally. There's another dimension here. Again, connected to Amartya's work. He found that homicide rates in Calcutta are among the lowest in the world. So the question is why? They're lower than even Tokyo. Yeah, so the question is why? And the lot of work went around that. And the reason it was that is because rich people, poor people lived in the same community. So you had ownership over that. And transport. Public transport is quite good apparently in Calcutta. So rich people, poor people, middle class, all are using the same transport. So there's shared acceptance. And in some ways, education, health has to now address the issue of public provisioning or not. In the late 19th century, early 20th century, Europe took very profound decisions of saying that they want to have free, compulsory, universal education for everyone, public, and that I think transforms society. Developing countries have the same challenge in front of them. And by the way, European countries did that at lower levels income than what developing countries are now. So this public goods, public-private are very profound questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Malik. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Great pleasure.